Yes. Then they stay till 3:30.
Greetings to everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Olive. Okay, so I'm not sure. I think you are from most parts of the world. I'm not sure where you're from, but here in South Africa, it's 8 p.m. So it's actually good evening. So I'd like to say thank you to the Afrolongevity Foundation for the incredible honor of speaking to you today. We are here to explore the topic that is deeply rooted in our heritage and brilliantly illuminated by modern science, the healing power of plants. And I see many of you are from Africa, and it's not something that is new with our traditional healers using plant-based therapies for centuries. So we are harnessing all of that knowledge in modern day science to be able to actually make it freely available to the Western world as well. Okay, so we'll move on to the slides. A little bit about me. I'm an entrepreneur and a director of Xenoman. It's a company that produces supplements and healthcare products, beauty products that's based on antioxidants and plants, seed extracts, and so on. Further to that, I'm a senior lecturer at the Department of Biomedical Sciences at Mangosuthu University of Technology in South Africa. And my interests essentially are to create and harness through sort of combinations of plant extracts and supplementation products that will expand life in a way, maybe perhaps even products that are aimed at women, like beauty products, weight loss products, but I'll speak a little bit about that, weight loss products through fat browning. So these are all plant-based products as well. So I'll speak a bit more towards the end about some of the research that I'm currently undertaking. Okay, the story of our heritage. Before laboratories and pharmacies, there definitely were forests, much more forests than we have today, savannas, gardens. The natural landscape was protected much more than it is even in our current times. Our ancestors were the original scientists, observing, experimenting, discovering the healing properties of plants around us. This knowledge passed down through generations is a priceless inheritance. But sadly, some of it has been lost with our predecessors. I know I can say this for sure. My granny growing up, she was always an older granny. You know, she was in her 80s and I was like 10 years old. She was always in the garden planting. She never really went to the doctor to seek any sort of medical intervention. She would go in the garden. If she had an ulcer or she suspected she had a tummy ache, she would go cut something that she had planted, grind it down with her grinding stone, and she would use that. For a earache, she will insert some sort of aloe vera compound. But sadly, I never really picked up much of that, except perhaps the love for nature that she's passed down to me. Yeah, so all of that comes from Ayurveda that she brought through, having been taught by her parents. I suspect she may have been born probably in the late 1800s because her birth certificate said 1901, and we know that they seldom registered their kids at birth, probably 10 years later. So she probably was born at the late 1800s. And so all of that knowledge she brought with her to South Africa, and she spoke mainly, very little English, with mainly Tamil, which is the vernacular of the South Indians. So her communication was difficult for a child of my age because I primarily spoke English. So yes, so a lot of that information now we can find in research journals coming through from India, and then the same, sadly, in the African countries, indigenous plants, we can do a lot more as far as research is concerned, scientific research into anti-cancer properties, antifungal bacteria, and so on. But the body of evidence is growing, gladly, and it's going to get better, and it will not remain buried in literature. We will try and bring those through as remedies so we can actually go out to the pharmacy. Instead of buying synthetic substances, we can now buy what our ancestors have created in the past. So let's move on. Okay, so our star for today is the moringa tree, often called the miracle tree or mother's best friend. My first encounter with this plant, okay, my mom, she always grew the plant. I mean, she would cook the herbs down, and she'd make dal with the drumsticks. I'm sure everyone knows what dal is by now. Indian food seems to be all over the world these days. So yeah, so she would cook this products from this plant, but never really knew what the benefits were until I think my second child. And then my mom says, okay, do you want to try some of the soup? And she believes that it has wound healing properties. So being a scientist and a modern day scientist at that, I then went into the literature and I started to read up, what is this moringa? Is there any side effects? That's what all I want to know. Are there any side effects? And that's where this whole world opened up. And I was astounded by the number of medicinal properties that have been reported in scientific journals on this specific plant. And that created a whole journey for me from that point on. And that was 2012. That's when my discovery on this plant and other types of medicinal plants grew leverage over the years. So this description or its label, it's not just that. From its leaves packed with more vitamin C than oranges and more calcium than milk, to its seeds which can purify water, every part of this tree serves a purpose. Traditionally, it has been a go-to remedy for anemia, inflammation, weakness. It's a true gift from nature. And currently at MUT, I proposed a faculty-wide project specifically because it's been reported that in South Africa, as many as 12% of children under 5 are malnourished and display stunting. In a country that is supposedly an emerging economy, this shouldn't be so. And I thought about all of the research that I'd already done on moringa, and I thought this could be the answer to malnutrition, whether it's in infants through maybe giving or administering moringa to mothers who are lactating to produce better quality milk for their infants, or also to teaching mothers of infants, of growing children under 5, how to use moringa, even if it's just adding it to their porridge. If you look at this tree, if you had to now go in and take your trolley and go and purchase all of these products, it's going to come to a sizable amount. And in a low income setting, it's probably not going to happen. Yet you can get all of this from using the moringa leaves itself or using the tincture or the drops. just adding it to porridge can create from a very baseline low nutritional value product to something that is of high nutritive value. So the product, this study that I proposed would be to grow the moringa, because we've got an agricultural department, we've got an environmental health department. So growing at optimal growth conditions, the moringa plant, to see how it affects the phytochemical and nutritive value, changing the soil components. And from there, even using moringa as a fertilizer. It's also been reportedly used as animal fodder, where the growth potential of the animal and the meat product value was upregulated just by using moringa in the fodder. So this plant is definitely not going to go to waste. Every bit of it can be used with the aim of growing it as a sustainable crop. I know it's been done in many parts of the world, but I don't think the general public is aware of the absolute value of this tree. So I think more people should be educated on the value of moringa itself. And I'm just talking nutritional value at this stage. I haven't even touched on the medicinal value.
Ben.
Okay.
Sorry, excuse me. Please, can you mute yourself? Okay, I'm muting everyone now. Okay, sorry. Professor Govinda, please, can you continue? Please, once you join, kindly mute yourself. Dr. Govinda, please, you can unmute yourself and continue.
Oh, sorry, I've been talking to myself for a while. I didn't know I was muted. Okay, so if you look at the nutritive value of the moringa itself, it has everything that meat would have, all the proteins, all the nutrients, all the micronutrients. So even if you never had meat at your disposal and all you had was a baseline, maybe rice or porridge or whatever you could find that's of carbohydrate content, you add this to it, you will never experience malnutrition. Okay, that is a big finding. That is a huge finding. So traditional uses used for centuries to treat over 300 ailments, from malnutrition to inflammation to infections, diabetes, etc. Okay, not to mention anti-cancer properties. Okay, so the burning question is, with such an impressive resume, scientists like myself began to ask a critical question. Could this nutritional powerhouse also be a weapon against one of our greatest health challenges, being cancer? More so now. So my research set out to explore this using cervical cancer as a model. A disease we know is driven by human papillomavirus, or HPV. So why choose cervical cancer? Okay, a little bit more about myself. I specialize in cytopathology, which is the diagnosis of cancer, and largely also gynecologic cancers. So anything from the female genital tract through the pap smear is what we diagnose. So HPV, cervical cancer, is also the highest deaths occur from this disease in South Africa through cancer in Black women, and the second most prevalent number of deaths in South Africa, next to breast cancer in the general population. So that's still quite significant. Although we have a cervical screening program, due to many things like, I think HIV being the biggest one, as many as half of HIV positive individuals will develop cancer. And so in females, cervical cancer seems to be one of the major cancers that turn up. during the disease process. So having a large HIV positive population, cervical cancer incidence is high, although they do get screens. HIV positive patients do get screened a lot more regularly than a normal individual. So usually a person gets screened for cervical cancer once in 10 years. If they have a negative pap smear, they come back in 10 years. Okay, and assuming you never come into contact with HPV. HPV is absolutely rife. It's much more prevalent. The incidence is much higher than HIV itself. So it's most likely that you will come in contact with HPV than HIV. So HPV, there's 200 odd subtypes of HPV. They are classified as high-risk subtypes and low-risk subtypes. The high-risk subtypes have been isolated more often in the tumors themselves as opposed to the low-risk subtypes. So the two big ones would be the HPV-16 and HPV-18, which have been most isolated from cervical cancers. So HPV is the main etiological agent for the development of cervical cancer. Okay, so looking at this diagram, so when you come into contact with HPV, at that stage, unless you do a HPV typing, we don't really know what's causing the lesions. So it could be high risk or low risk subtypes. The low risk subtypes, generally, I'm just looking for the pointer. Okay. They tend to more often regress because they're mainly the low risk subtypes of HPV that's causing these low grade lesions. Regress means they just spontaneously disappear. Maybe your immune system is robust and it takes care of it. A percentage will progress to a higher grade lesion. We call it high grade squamous intraepithelial lesions. So when it progresses, at this stage, they can only persist, means stay the same, or they can 1%, which I suppose are the high-risk subtype lesions, will progress to invasive cancer. So when it's in the pre-malignant stage, it's treatable. You can treat through various means, ablative therapy, cryotherapy, large loop excision biopsies, but all of these things, they are not a cure for the HPV itself. HPV is a virus, human papilloma virus. So you're not eradicating the virus. There's no cure for HPV. Well, so they say. There's no cure for HPV. Although there is a vaccine for specific high-risk subtype viruses that are being rolled out, I think, starting for the last 5 years, from age 9, females in age 9 onwards. So if you already have encountered HPV, there's nothing out there that you can say, you know what, take this pill or insert this medication and it's going to heal you. There's absolutely nothing out there. Okay, so the 1% will progress to invasive cancer. Okay, once it is invasive, most times it's asymptomatic. So patients don't really know they have cancer until it's probably metastasized. By metastasized, for those who are not scientifically learned when it comes to cancer, it means moves from one location to the other through the lymphatic system or through the blood. Okay, so when it's in the pre-malignant phase, it can be treated quite effectively. But still, there is a high proportion of cancers that are recorded in South Africa and around the world. And I suspect also it's through cultural issues where women do not want to avail themselves for these pap smears, or there's maybe lack of education. It could be location-wise in rural areas, or they don't come back for their results. So there are various reasons as to why there's still a high incidence of cervical cancer worldwide. Okay, so further to that, if you think of a healthy cell, so understanding cervical cancer, if you think of a healthy cell, okay, that has, just give me a second, okay. Okay, so to investigate the anti-cancer effects of moringa, I've used specific tests to determine, does moringa actually kill cancer cells? Although I did find one paper from an Indian national that investigated moringa against the same cell line that I'm going to speak about. She didn't really pinpoint as to how it caused the cells to die, at what stage of the cell cycle, for example. So I wanted to investigate. Yes, it does cause cell death, but how? How does it happen? At what stage of the cycle? Which pathway is this happening? And the word apoptosis is mechanized mechanical cell death. So all cells have a specific lifespan, and at the end of its lifespan, usually it will die in normal cell death, which is apoptosis. Or if there's maybe abnormal DNA that's somehow propagated within the cell. Okay, so this seems to happen quite often in the body, but our immune surveillance picks this up and triggers cell death mechanisms, so we don't usually develop cancers. But when these mechanisms are inhibited, especially by specific types of viruses, that's when cancer will develop. When cell death is not happening, it's not switching on the apoptosis, or the virus is actually switching off the apoptosis, that is when cancer can and will develop. Okay, looking at the toolkit. So we used a standard line of cervical cancer cells called HeLa cells. I will talk a little bit about HeLa cells. I would hate to just dismiss HeLa cells as just an ordinary cell line, because it's anything but ordinary. So just a little narrative about HeLa cells. So it's not just a tool, it comes from a real woman with a real story that has forever changed medical ethics. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the immortal life of HeLa, a story in our cells. So in 1951, a 31-year-old African-American woman named Henrietta Lacks visited the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. She complained of a knot in her womb. She was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cervical cancer, specifically an exophytic tumor. An exophytic tumor is a tumor that grows outwardly. So you can actually see the tumor, as opposed to the diagram I showed you, it's growing inwardly towards the blood vessels. It's growing outward. So it was obviously protruding out of the cervix. It was easily visualized and able to actually access this tumor very easily. So it was a very aggressive form of cervical cancer called endocervical adenocarcinoma. So a small sample of the tumor was taken during a biopsy, mind you, without her knowledge or consent, a common and deeply unethical practice at that time, and also being a Black woman in that era and that time, I think more so unethical practice was rife. While Henrietta Lacks tragically passed away from the disease months later, something remarkable happened in the lab of Dr. George Guy. For the first time in history, human cells taken from a biopsy did not die after a few cell divisions, unlike all the other human cells before them, which had a finite lifespan. Henrietta Lacks' cells doubled every 20 to 24 hours and proliferated relentlessly. They became the first immortal human cell line ever grown in culture, and that is a huge breakthrough for medical science. Named HeLa cells, as you can see, HeLa, Henrietta Lack, using the first two letters of her first and last names. They were mass-produced and shipped to labs across the globe. They played a pivotal role in some of the most important medical breakthroughs in history. The development of the polio vaccine came out of HeLa cells, research into cancer, AIDS, and radiation effects, mapping the human genome. Even in the COVID-19 pandemic, HeLa cells were used for vital research. For decades, the Lax family had no idea that their mother's cells were alive, revolutionizing science and generating billions of dollars in profit for the biomedical industry, while they themselves could not afford, ironically, could not afford healthcare. The story of HeLa is powerful and painful, in a painful duality. It is a story of scientific triumph and the foundation of modern science. It is a story of profound injustice, racial inequity, and a violation of bodily autonomy. Today, Henrietta Lacks is finally being recognized for her unwitting, world-changing contribution. When we work with HeLa cells in the lab, we are not just studying cervical cancer. We are touching a piece of this profound human story, a story of immortality born from tragedy, and a permanent reminder of the critical importance of ethics and patient rights in science. So the HeLa cell is said to have propagated so much so that it has surpassed the body weight of the actual Henrietta Lack many times over. So that's billions of cells that have been propagated from the one sample. And to think, I mean, after all those decades, I mean, here it is, I find myself using those self-same cells in this experiment, and that is extremely astounding to me. So how did we do the study? How did we approach the study? So we use a standardized HeLa cell line, which we grew in flasks under sterile conditions and using CO2 in 95% CO2 and a warm incubator at 37 degrees. We prepared the moringa extracts. So I used three types of extracts. I used water, which is aqueous. I used ethanol, and I used hexane. So the idea is to use polar and non-polar solvents, because a polar solvent will extract specific types of nutrients or components from the crude mass itself. And while the non-polar substances will have a whole different spectrum. So I wanted to see exactly which of those would cause or produce better results. Okay, so you've got to use a spectrum of polar and non-polar solvents. So I use a Soxhlet apparatus, and I did extractions using a Soxhlet apparatus to produce this crude mass. And then, yes, within that Soxhlet apparatus is where I use the specific types of solvents. Okay, so the type of tests that I used were cell viability tests, which is the MTT assay. It's a very long scientific word and not worth mentioning at this juncture. So this tells you whether your cells are viable, okay, and the level of viability. Colony forming assays. So a colony is deemed to be a group of cells that are 50 or more cells per cluster of cells. So to see how exactly does the moringa affect the ability of the cervical cancer cell line to spread, okay, to grow new colonies, which is important in metastases, right? So apoptosis markers, capsase 3 and 7, to see if the moringa causes cell death, and specifically if it causes mitochondrial induced cell death through cytochrome C. So those are the triggers for apoptosis. Then, of course, I use cell cycle analysis, and specific types of proteins were analyzed to see at what areas of the cell cycle does the moringa actually cause the cell death. So it was quite specific. I wanted more knowledge out there about how it's doing the killing, not just to say, okay, tick the box, it's just killing, but how is it doing its work? So that the research design was based on that. Okay, so here we looked for apoptosis, the cell's self-destruct mechanism or program. We used a fluorescent dye that lights up green when the key executioner enzymes, capsase 3 and 7, are active. The untreated cells on the left are dark, but the moringa treated, okay, we'll come to that. This is a clear signal that moringa isn't just randomly poisoning the cell. So here, if you look at these diagrams, it shows that in all of the solvents, there was dose-dependent killing of the cervical cancer cells with the various types of extracts, although some were more optimal than others. And I think the aqueous seemed to be the most prominent, which is good because people, when you're going to use it at home, you're not going to go and look for like hexane or ethanol. So the fact that the findings show that the aqueous or the water extracts were more potent bodes well for use in a regular non-scientific environment like a home. So the results were clear. The more moringa extract we used, the more cancer cells died. Both hexane and ethanol extras were effective as well as aqueous. This is the first and most basic proof of anti-cancer activity. So this slide here shows the ability of moringa to inhibit colony formation. I had to dilute the colonies down, or the cells down, to 10 or so cells per petri dish. This is a 6-well petri dish containing all of the growth culture mediums in it, and then assess and see how effective were they in inhibiting the colony formation, if at all. So the first one is a control where it doesn't contain any of the extract. And the next two you can see is 25 micrograms and then higher dosage. So if you examine carefully, you will notice that the colonies are somewhat sparser in the 25 grams in both instances. And in the third one, it's much more so. What this says is that this extract, this moringa extract, is able to reduce the ability of the cancer cells to form new colonies. So even if they do metastasize, the ability to form new colonies is quite restricted if you are dosing with moringa. So that's quite a good finding. Okay, and here I use the caspase 3 and 7, which are the specific mitochondrial cascade proteins that are triggered during apoptosis. So if you look here, it's quite evident that they're showing up, the fluorescing means that caspase 3 and 7 are activated, which means the cell death mechanisms through the executioner proteins, caspase 3 and 7, are being triggered. That's causing the cell death to actually occur. Yeah. So the molecular detective story. Satisfied that moringa was effective, we became molecular detectives. We wanted to find out how it was causing the chaos inside the cell. We looked at key proteins, cyclins, E and B1. These are, if you look at cyclins, they are like gears of a car. It drives the process of the cell cycle. And if you look at cancer cells, cervical cancer cells specifically, cyclins are irregularly or abnormally elevated, specifically cyclin E and cyclin B1. So I knew this going into the study. So I wanted to know, does moringa have an effect on the cyclins? So I dosed them down, and then I conducted studies with antigens and antibodies, antibodies against cyclin E and cyclin B1 to see how it looked against our untreated. So you have an untreated sample, and then we have treated samples with varying concentrations, and we then compare the treated versus the untreated, and then we'll see exactly how they differ, if at all. And we found that the cyclin E and cyclin B1 were inhibited. So they brought the values down, which means that it had therapeutic effect in preventing the cycle from moving forward with abnormal genes like the HPV genes that are in the cell. So in that way, there was a positive finding. Then we have E2F1. E2F1 is a major transcription enzyme. So the E7 oncogene of the HPV protein, or HPV virus, binds to the E2, abnormally binds to the E2F1. Therefore, it prevents, it allows the cell to progress through a part of the cell cycle, the initial part of the cell cycle, whereas usually it will bind to the retinoblastoma gene, which is the tumor suppressor gene. But in this case, because it's taking up the binding sites, it's now pushing the cell forward into a proliferation phase. So this is abnormally elevated in cervical cancer. So I wanted to know, does moringa downregulate E2F1 and therefore inhibit the cell from moving forward with the aberrant HPV genome within the nucleus? And lo and behold, it did exactly that. This was a major finding as well, because E2F1 is a major driver of proliferation of the oncogenes through the cycle. Okay, so telomerase, a little story about telomerase. And sometimes you think genetics, it may be difficult for a layperson to understand, but we can make it simple, but not too simple, right? So telomerase, so let's just go with telomerase. So telomerase is an enzyme. So if you look at normal cells, so normal cells have, okay, my cat's on the table, so excuse me, 1 second. Oh, yeah. Right. So telomerase is not active in senescent cells. What is a senescent cell? A senescent cell is a cell that has a finite number of cell divisions, like most cells in our body. For example, I'll give you like a cell has, say, 20 cell divisions, which means it has 20 telomere repeat sequences at the end of its DNA. So each time a cell divides, it knocks off one of those repeat sequences. So eventually when it gets to the point where it's at the last sequence, what happens is it then triggers apoptosis, which is a natural cell death mechanism. So that's what should happen, right? But there's only 2 instances where it doesn't happen. In stem cells produce telomerase, that gene is switched on, which means stem cells can reproduce indefinitely, provided that they are given the proper nutrition. They can also develop into any type of cell within the area in which they are found. So you can grow an arm or whatever the case may be, although it's not ethical, but stem cells can do that. So the one other instance where telomerase is also switched on is in a cancer cell. So this is abnormally switched on. This is done by the HPV oncogene E6. So it switches on the telomerase, and from that point on, it keeps adding on telomere sequences, which means the cancer cell is no longer senescent. It's become immortal. So that's how normal cells differ from cancer cells. A normal cell has a finite number of cell divisions, while an immortal cancer cell will continue to propagate, will continue to proliferate in its space. It will invade supporting tissues around, and it's non-functional tissue. So if it's growing in the lung, it's going to take up the space, the resources of the good cells that are actually helping you to breathe, replacing with non-functional tissue. It even produces its own blood vessels, called a process called angiogenesis. And yeah, it's just amazing what a tumor or a cancer cell will do to survive. So I think these are all survival mechanisms that are switched on abnormally in a cell. So just a little insight into exactly what telomerase is. So yes, telomerase is upregulated in cervical cancer, naturally so, as it is in most cancers. So I also want to know, does moringa downregulate telomerase? In downregulating telomerase, it means that the telomerase is going to be switched off, and then just say there's 5 sequences of repeat telomerase sequences or telomere sequences left. After those 5 cell divisions of those cancer cells, it will then trigger cell death mechanisms and the cell will die. So yes, I did conduct a test. It's called the TeloTag RT-PCR test, and it showed dose-dependent reduction in telomerase activity through the HTERT gene. So that was a major finding as well. I do apologize if it's overly scientific, but I don't think it's beyond understanding. Yeah, so I'm trying to make it as simple as possible as well, so I don't lose anyone. So the molecular results. So in here we found moringa didn't just attack one thing, it attacked the cancer's entire command and control system. It downregulated E6, cyclin E6 and B1. It took the foot off the gas pedal. It inhibited telomerase. It stripped away the immortality shield, making the cells mortal again. And it disrupted E2F1, confusing the master switch. This multi-pronged attack is incredibly powerful. And to think it's something that we could grow on our own. So the big picture. Moringa is a multi-target approach to cancer. So that is the true genius of this plant-based medicine. A pharmaceutical drug is often a single, precise bullet targeting just one protein. But plants like moringa are more like a symphony. They contain hundreds of compounds that work together, hitting multiple targets at the same time. This synergy makes it very difficult for cancer cells to develop resistance, which is a major problem with many modern chemotherapies. So that is one of the major shortcomings of current therapeutics, is that just when you find a chemotherapeutic intervention working, something happens where the cell defends itself by becoming resistant to that single approach chemotherapeutic drug. But with this multi-pronged approach, it kind of hits various things at different times, at the same time. So this study itself shows you that it does multifaceted approach to killing this the cancer cell or inhibiting it from growing. So the conclusion of the study. So to summarize the research, we have shown that moringa leaf extract is a potent anti-cancer agent against cervical cancer cells in the laboratory. It kills cells, stops their spread, and intelligently disrupts the very machinery that drives their growth. It is a compelling candidate for further research. So just a disclaimer, this is a study on high doses, obviously, because we're using small numbers of cell in a petri dish. So it is a brilliant and essential first step, but it's not a human trial. So you are urged not to use the information to abandon your doctor's advice to self-medicate for cancer. This research is about validating our traditional knowledge and creating a foundation for future safe, effective medicines. So it can't be taken and in its entirety as an approach to mitigate cancer. Okay, so perhaps the research can be taken further, and in due course, something like a chemotherapeutic or natural intervention can be developed. So, so beyond the lab, the wider world of plant power. Okay. The story of moringa is inspiring, but it's just one chapter in a much larger book. The African continent is a treasure chest of medicinal plants. Let's look at a few other examples that science is validating for general wellness. So I'm just touching on a few sort of plant and roots and things you probably may be aware of, some maybe not. So definitely, I'm sure you heard of ginger and turmeric. People were using this to a large extent during COVID. I know many were saying, you know what, use ginger, use turmeric, add a bit of garlic in there. And it worked for the most part. People, there was nothing else that they could do. Everyone was saying like, no, take a vaccine or wait for the vaccine. You know, you can't just sit around waiting. So people started harnessing their knowledge of their forefathers, starting to develop their own self-medications. So these are kitchen staples with profound effects. That is, ginger is a fantastic tool for settling nausea and aiding digestion. Both ginger and turmeric are powerful anti-inflammatories. Turmeric's active compound, curcumin, is so effective that it's compared to some anti-inflammatory drugs, but without the same side effects. It's great for joint pain and overall wellness. So curcumin is actually the active compound from turmeric, from the turmeric powder that's used in most types of ethnic cooking. I think Indian cooking as well, Malaysian cooking. Brings us to hibiscus and garlic. For heart health, look no further. Garlic is nature's antibiotic and helps manage blood pressure and cholesterol. And hibiscus tea, our beloved zobo or sorrel, isn't just refreshing. Clinical trials have proven that drinking it daily can lower high blood pressure as effectively as some prescription medications. Isn't that interesting? Seeing as there's a large population of even post-COVID or even at a certain age, high blood pressure seems to be the norm these days, together with diabetes, which speaks volumes about insulin resistance as well. Hibiscus and garlic we've looked at, right? The why, synergy, and phytonutrients. So why eat the whole plant and not just take a supplement? It's all about synergy. The magic isn't in one single compound. It's in the harmonious interaction of all the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and fiber in the plant. They work together to enhance each other's benefits, and more importantly, they buffer potential side effects. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Okay, that's worth actually remembering. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So let's look at the rationale for the whole plant versus a single molecule. So now you might be wondering, if moringa is so powerful, why can't we just identify the one active compound and put it into a pill? This is a great question, and it gets to the heart of the difference between traditional plant medicine and modern pharmacology. On the one hand, you have the whole plant extract, a complex natural cocktail of hundreds of interacting compounds. On the other hand, you have the single molecule approach, which isolates one ingredient thought to be the most important, right? You are isolating just one. So it's the difference between listening to a full harmonious orchestra, for example, or listening to one single instrument playing as loudly as it can. Both can be powerful, but they are fundamentally different. So synergy versus side effects. So what are the practical implications of this difference? The whole plant operates on synergy. The various compounds work together, often enhancing each other's absorption and effectiveness. Some compounds might even mitigate the potential side effects of others, creating a natural balancing act. This multi-target approach is what makes it hard for diseases like cancer to develop resistance. So we mentioned before, if it's a single sort of targeted therapeutic, it's likely to develop resistance against that drug. But now, in something that's multi-targeted, it's sort of confusing to the cell. How do you develop resistance to multiple entities at the same time? In contrast, a single isolated compound is a powerful, precise bullet. It can be incredibly effective for one specific problem. However, because it's so concentrated and acts on a single pathway, it often comes with a higher risk of side effects, which is true. Furthermore, pathogens or cancer cells can more easily mutate and become resistant to the one, as I mentioned. It isn't to say that the single compound drugs are bad. They are lifesavers, but it explains why whole plants offer a unique and complementary approach to wellness. Integrating plant power into your life. So how can you bring this power into your daily life? Okay, it's simpler than you may think. Okay, you can do herbal teas like moringa, hibiscus, and ginger. You can cook with generous amounts of garlic, turmeric, black pepper. I'm not saying cook curries, although all of those go into the curry. Let your food be your first and most delicious line of defense. And always, always consult with a knowledgeable practitioner before starting any new herbal regimen, especially if you are on other medications. I have to give you an example of, okay, let's see, right? Why you should not think natural substances are okay to take if you are on other medications. So I've studied extensively, plants extracts like curcumin, which is from the turmeric, resveratrol, which is a grape seed extract, quercetin. All of these are very good antioxidants. They have multifaceted effects on the body. However, one thing that you can't ignore is that these plants are naturally blood thinners. They will naturally thin your blood. So if you have cardiovascular disease and you're on blood thinners, for example, and now you go on and you think, okay, these are natural and you can buy them off the shelf and I heard they're good, let me just take them. Okay, this could actually enhance the effects of your blood thinners and can cause detrimental effects like spontaneous bleeds internally and externally. So plant extracts must also be taken with caution, especially if you are suffering from a specific condition and you are on medication, or chronic medication of sorts. Right? That disclaimer, I thought that was important to mention there. So the future is green. We are standing at a beautiful crossroads. On one side, we have our rich ancestral wisdom. On the other, we have powerful tools of modern science. By walking this path together, we can cultivate a healthier future, one that is grounded in the proven power of nature. The future of medicine is not just in a pill, it's also in a leaf, a root, and a seed. Before I conclude, I just thought I would share with you just some of the journey that I've been. Has taken me through different sort of pathways. Sometimes I struggle to keep focus on one absolute thing, so I have to like bring myself back because I have lots of eureka moments when I'm just say, for example, if I'm studying plant for one aspect, like an antioxidant potential, then I'll come across something like, okay, it can also trigger a specific type of say a gene that can trigger increased bone marrow density. It's not something I can ignore. So then I kind of like sometimes deviate, I'll go there, and then I'll look for other plants that can do the same. So that's how I do formulations, and I'll give you some idea as to how I come up with formulas, right? So my passion is in developing formulae that will address everyday health conditions, chronic disease, things that people are taking chronic medications for. I believe chronic disease, the disease that we call is diabetes or high blood pressure, or we're saying cardiovascular disease. These are the symptoms. There is a cause, and I'm a huge proponent of the cause and effect. Right? I believe it, and I live by it. For every effect, there is a cause. So I go down and I research to the actual molecular basis of disease. I look at specific pathways. Okay, and all of these are grounded in peer-reviewed research. I identify specific targets. For example, something that could mitigate maybe high blood sugar. I will look at plant extracts that can bring down blood sugar. I will look at insulin resistance or mitigating high blood sugar by reducing insulin resistance, which I believe is a major cause of diabetes. It's not just that, you know what, you're eating too many sugary foods and you don't have enough insulin to take care of it. It's the insulin resistance itself. So other things I would look at are like inflammatory pathways, antibacterial, antifungal. So it depends on what you are trying to address. So you'll find like a problem statement, how to reduce insulin resistance, for example. And then you will go and you will do your research. You can use your AI tools. I mean, I'm not more smarter than AI, so I'm not going to say I never use it. Okay, many people will say they don't, but you're lying. So I'm just saying you can use your AI tools, but don't rely on your AI tools. So it's a starting point. Then you take that, you then go into your Google Scholar and your various research platforms. You look for peer-reviewed research to back up what is being said. And there you'll even find more information on plants, seed extracts, whatever it is. Then you have a list of key ingredients. And then from that point on, you will investigate possible side effects. Okay, we don't want to introduce anything that's going to cause drastic side effects. Then you look at dosage, and I don't support fillers or anything like that. Everything has to be natural and the most highest efficacy. So that's how you formulate, and it's based on sound research, and you bring it all together and you create something that's targeting a specific outcome. So based on this described plan that I just mentioned now, I've been looking at things like how plants and extracts can initiate fat browning. I'm sure many of you don't or haven't heard of brown fat. We don't have just one type of fat. We have brown fat, we have white fat. So in babies, there's more brown fat because brown fat helps keep you warm. It regulates your temperature, brings up your temperature. So I didn't know this. I also didn't know this before, but babies can't shiver. So they have more brown fat to keep them warm because shivering actually helps to keep you warm. So we lose much of that brown fat as we grow older. So we have just pockets of brown fat. It's strategic parts of our bodies. So what is the big deal about brown fat? So brown fat is shown to produce good metabolic health outcomes. It can aid in fat loss. Okay, it can actually reduce your body weight if you activate your brown fat, turn your white fat into brown fat or beige fat. It can also reduce the incidence of cardiovascular disease. In one cohort of about 100,000 patients, you can only see brown fat on a PET scan. They discovered that patients who had higher content of brown fat or beige fat have a lower incidence of cardiovascular disease. So now, okay, based on this, I asked myself, okay, how do I trigger brown fat? So I came across a molecule or a activation mechanism through the UCP uncoupling protein 1. I then started to investigate based on UCP1, what can activate UCP1 to initiate brown fat and increase mitochondria, which is what causes the fat to look brown, is the increased amounts of mitochondria. So I came across a whole host of different plant compounds. So I put those together, and like I mentioned how the strategy that I gave you before, I came up with a formula that can now trigger fat browning. So it's not just to lose body fat, the stubborn white fat, it's to also improve your metabolic health and reduce cardiovascular disease. Another study that I've worked on, I've actually created a product with antioxidants and plant extracts, indigenous plant extracts, cofactors, vitamins, and that product's called Gene E. Whatever's good for inside the body, excuse me, is also good for the outside. So that product is actually in the market at the moment. Excuse me. So the last one is the supplement that I'm currently rolling out, and that looks at cofactors specifically for the NRF2 pathway. Yeah. Okay, so I guess that brings me to the end of today's session. I'm not sure of the time. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you so much, Doc. Yeah, I'd be really grateful. This is a wonderful presentation, guys. When I saw this, I insisted that she must make this presentation. Reason being that this was the presentation I had wanted. You guys don't know Dr. Govinda. You guys don't know her. At the ILSA, she presented, she changed this topic, and when I read the paper, I said, no, in this program, she's going to present this. We're going to call her back maybe next year. She got a whole lot to offer us, and we're working with her for something very amazing, which I'm going to introduce to the house and then the community at large. Yes, if you have any question that you would want to ask, please do raise your hand, and I will call you for the question. Okay, Lion, go ahead. Please say your name, where you're joining from, then you ask your question. Thank you.
Good evening, Doc. Good evening, the host. I don't know if you can.
Good evening.
Okay. My name is Mark Leon, and thank you once again for the wonderful presentation. In fact, it is great. This is great. My question is the research based? Was the research based on the moringa seed? Then that is my first question. Then secondly, can the leaf and other parts, the roots and the sap, do they have such medicinal effects to cancer and other ailments? Thank you, ma.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I should have mentioned actually. These were the plant was harvested. I don't know if you know South Africa at all, from Limpopo province, from a very mature tree. The mature leaves were harvested. They were washed. They were dried inside, away from sunlight, and then pulverized. And you strip them. It was a hardy task. You've got to remove them carefully without removing the stems. You know, you're just harvesting the leaves alone. You can pulverize that into a coffee grinder, and there you have it. That's all you need. The second question, yes, I don't know offhand, but definitely the roots have medicinal value. The roots, the bark, the sap, I'm not too sure of if it even gives off much of a sap, but I know the flowers are edible as well. And the pods themselves, yeah. So yes, the answer is, and there's also, you can extract oil. I'm sure you've seen moringa oil out on the market. So the oils can be extracted from cold compression of the seeds for your topical, for skin sort of conditioning, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
The
ma.
next, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Ade Dodger, please ask your question. Then after that, Chang.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Ma, for the presentation. And my question is, because actually, I want to ask about the HPV vaccination. Is it advisable to take the vaccine or not? And is moringa leaf can be used in preventive measure for the HPV, for the human
Okay.
papillomavirus?
Okay, good question. Okay, let me answer the first question. So, is it advisable to take HPV vaccine? I would say yes. I allowed my daughter a consent form. It's not given just to everyone. I mean, a consent form gets sent home. So you have an option to whether you want your child to be vaccinated. And I say definitely, because HPV is so rife, the chances of picking it up is quite, it's much easier than any other STD out there. Also, I would suggest you do an HPV typing test before you take your the vaccine. There's no point in taking it if you've already come into contact as an adult. Hence, it's rolled out much earlier in life before sexual contact. Okay, so that was that. So the second question, I can't really tout and tell you, you know what, it's an anti-HPV agent, but I can give you a small case study, which it was just mind-blowing to me. So I am a university lecturer, and we had a student that was meant to present at the end of his work integrated learning. They do a case study, they present in their third year. The student, he couldn't speak. He basically, he had issues, he had lesions growing on his throat. And at some stage, he confided in me and he said, you know what, ma'am, this is, he was very hoarse. It was it's more like a whisper. He couldn't really speak, articulate his words. So he says he has these lesions on his throat, and they are HPV lesions. They are growing quite aggressively. He has to go for, have them excised every 3 months. So I suspect that these are HPV 16 or 18 high risk subtype HPVs. So I was just coming out of the study, and for me, I was like, you know, when you do a study and you get great results and you want to tell the world and you say, this thing works, you know. But anyway, that excitement. And so I said to him, you know what, why don't you try this? I've had some good results in the lab. So there is a spice shop, local spice shop, Indian spice shop that sells these capsules. They're relatively cheap. So I said, no, go and buy the moringa capsules and take them. Just take them. You never know what's going to happen. And I saw him about 6 months later. He was sitting in my lab, in the cytology lab. But that time he had exited. So he just came in for some reason. He was just sitting there. So I asked, okay, so-and-so, how are you? He could speak. Yes, his voice was hoarse, but he could speak. I could hear what he was saying. And he says to me, ma'am, ever since I started taking moringa, and he was smart enough to pair it with the curcumin, he hasn't been for a single excision ever since. And he ended up taking cytology as his qualification as well. So that for you is a case study. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. You tell me, you judge from what I'm saying. Yeah. So I'm leaving it there. So
Yeah.
it's
Thank you
anti-HPV.
so much,
Sure, not a
ma'am.
problem. Yeah,
Thank you so much, ma'am.
thank you.
Yes, because I
Pleasure.
actually lost my mom 10 months ago to cervical cancer, and
Your
since then
mom?
I've been afraid of.
Oh man, yeah.
Yes,
Sorry
I
to
lost her
hear.
to cervical cancer.
It's tragic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Chan, go ahead with your question. After Chan, Chisom.
Okay. I think you muted. Oh, maybe not.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Right. Good evening, host. Thank you, Dr. Govinda, for this wonderful presentation. It was really down and explicit, like everybody who has never gone to medical school really understand. Thank you very much. And I'm speaking from Cameroon. So my first question is, you mentioned that we should try to incorporate this moringa into our diet. I want to ask that if we are supposed to do that, how are we, like which parts of the moringa are we supposed to use? And if we are using it, how?
Okay,
Then
good question.
the
Yeah.
second question,
Mm-hmm.
I know that HPV vaccine is given to, like the standards will say, is given to females at the age of 9. And in case somebody is screened for the human papilloma virus and there is nothing, can that person still take the vaccine, given that the person is above the age of 9? Thank you.
Okay, I'll answer the first question. Okay, from the review of literature, I would think the most beneficial part of the medicinal part of the moringa plant is the mature leaves. So I would say take the mature leaves. It's kind of bitter. You can cook it, but how much of the leaves are you going to eat up? I mean, really, no, it's not for me. Can't do it. So best thing, like I described, you will just cut the branches, wash them, dry them on paper inside, away from direct sunlight, until they're crisp and they're like, you can pull them out. Okay, you can harvest only the leaves, remove the stems, right? And then dry them out until they're crispy, sort of dehydrated. Put them into coffee grinder, or you can use your hands if you don't have it, because at that stage it's going to crumble anyway. And you just put it into an airtight container, maybe leave it into the refrigerator. You can add half a teaspoon. You can do it into your tea. You can, if you're innovative with making tea and do your own little tea baggy things, or you can add it into your food, into your stews. Yeah, you can be innovative. I'm thinking also you can do your jams. You can do your strawberry jams or whatever jam, and you can add this in because it's slightly bitterish, but not too bad, not too unpalatable. So yeah, you can be innovative, but just stick to the maybe half a teaspoon, or do a bit of research online to see what dosage is best for you. Yeah. Thank you. And the second question, yes, I would suggest that if you've done HPV typing and they found no HPV detected, you can take it's advisable that you take the vaccine, and it's a double dose. You get a booster shot as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, doctor. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Chisom, go ahead with your question. Then after Chisom, Onwara. Then I'll take the question in the comment section. And we'll call it a day.
Thank you so much, our speaker. This lecture opened my mind's eye. While she was talking about...
Chisom.
Yes? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
I can hear you.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I said, while she was talking about non-senescent cells, the cancer cells that gain immortality, a thought flashed through my mind, and I was just thinking, if some cells can actually gain immortality, like they can no longer die, Isn't there a way we can use them as models to study about biological life extension? If some cells can actually gain immortality, is it only towards the negative direction, like becoming cancer cells? Can't we use them as models to also see how to extend other cells, like, in regards to biological aging? And again, secondly, if we have this kind of research, and we can see here, these moringa plants was able to kill some cancer cells and all that, why are people still dying of cancers worldwide? Why is cancer still one of the leading cause of death globally? If we have this kind of research and there are certain plants that could, help in this regard. Thank you.
Okay, the first question, why can't we use the fact that you can upregulate telomerase, you mean, and just cause cells to become immortal? We do, to some extent, use it. We use it in science. It's not HeLa is not the only cell line that can propagate innumerable times in vitro. So there are other cell lines that they are now inducing immortality in them. They use maybe viral genes to be able to do that. But I'm not sure if you can actually pull that off in a human, because there has to be a switch to say stop. How are you going to switch it off if you switch it on? You're going to create a monster. I mean, so it takes deep science to be able to say when you're going to switch it off. Because I know that as you age, there's telomere shortening, right? I'm sure that's what you're alluding to. You are saying, why can't we lengthen the telomeres? That takes some deep research, and I don't think I'm well equipped to be able to answer that one. But also, I think ethics comes into play there as well. Anything that's gonna, yeah. That's the extent I can answer that question. Okay, the second question was, why are there still people dying? Although, because the causes of cancer are not just one. Okay, various types of cancers have various different causes. It could be endogenous reasons, exogenous environmental things, viruses, HIV. Now I think it's COVID is a big one. Nobody's talking about it, but it's done some damage to DNA because of inflammation. So I believe that, I don't know if you agree with me when I say that our forefathers lived longer, I think, longer and healthier. Now we live longer, but not really healthy, in healthy bodies. Like I mentioned in the last talk, the last 15 years of lifespan is spent in debilitated bodies. Like you've got arthritis and you've got high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and all sorts of things. So I think it's also lifestyle. The food that we are eating is largely processed. We're not eating off the ground. We're not eating single sort of meals consisting of a single entity or two or three ingredients. We're having a whole host of additives, preservatives, things that are going to compete and cause oxidative stress in our bodies that's constant. So you can't be eating moringa once a week and think, okay, that's going to be a magic bullet. I'm not going to develop cancer. You have to be consistent. You have to exercise. You have to eat right. You've got to bring your weight down. All of these things, they contribute to disease pathways in some way. So it's not, you can't just consume large amounts of alcohol and not sort of modify your lifestyle and then try and take remedies on the side. You're polluting and then you're trying to clean up. It doesn't work like that. So hence people are still producing cancers in their bodies. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Doc. Please don't mind my questions too much. I'm a scientist. I'm just curious. And thank you
these are
for
good
such
questions.
a
Thought-provoking.
wonderful
Thank you.
response. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Chisom, for more, I'll send you an article on this from the work of Aubrey de Grey on the senescent cells and all that, on how to do that. Honora.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Doc.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Doc, for your presentation. My question goes like this. This moringa of a thing, you keep on talking like taking the leaf, moringa leaf. You don't have to sun dry it. You have to like just allow it to dry, the leaf to dry, and then blend. So is it on the must that we should powder the leaf? Like for example, can someone wake up in the morning, pluck the leaf, put it in in a neat kettle, put some small water, cook like 10 minutes, then extract the water and take? Is it advisable, or can someone squeeze it just like bitter leaf with some water and take? Will it work? So that's
Yes, it
one
will
of
work.
the
Yes, it will work. There's some feedback. I'm not sure from where though. I can hear myself echoing.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you noticed in the study, I use an aqueous extract as well, which I found to be the most
Excuse me,
potent.
Honora, can you unmute
Are
yourself?
you still there? Okay. Am I unmuted? No. Can I continue with the response? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I'm trying to mute because mute someone.
Unmute.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, can I continue?
I can hear you.
All right. Okay, thanks.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so if you notice in the study, one of the solvents that I used was aqueous. So that's water, right? So essentially what happened was in the SOxLess apparatus, it's a boiling sort of steaming and a boiling extraction method. So what you're asking is, can you do the same? Yes, you can do the same. You won't probably get a nice concentrated sticky crude that I got because I also dried that. I evaporated all of the water out of it till I got a sticky crude. But that's not absolutely necessary. You don't require that much. So even if you boil it or steam it, even if you do the stems even are beneficial, so don't waste the stems. You can do them with the stems and the leaves instead of plucking them all out. And I think this is what my mom does, right? Just sharing her recipe. So you can even add other things to it to make it more palatable. You can add garlic and pepper, kind of like a nice soup. Yeah, and it will be beneficial for sure. So water extraction is the best method as compared to the others, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Pleasure. Are we taking any further questions?
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for the presentation. I think there are some questions in the chat box. Maybe you can check them out.
Okay.
Okay.
Not
Can I
too
read them
afraid with
quickly?
this. Yeah, please do. I'm not afraid with the Zoom. I use
Okay.
Teams usually. Yeah. Thank you.
One of us from Uganda said, thank you, Doc. This was a good presentation. Here in Uganda, we developed a proposal for proof of concept to confirm whether moringa improves nutrition of children under 5 years. I need your, okay, Countess, we share more on this, okay. How do we, another one asks, how do we preserve moringa in powder form? Is there any specific way of preparing it for powdered storage?
Okay, it's not something we have in our kitchens, but I would think a freeze dryer would be the best way. To freeze dry the product will actually cause it to have a longer shelf life. If not, in a frost-free fridge would be the best way, in a sealed container. But I would try to not keep it for too long. It is a plant-based material as well, so yeah.
Yeah. So you have the last but not the least question here. Okay. Good and wonderful presentation. Please, can a nursing mother actually take a moringa leaf?
Can who? Sorry?
A nursing mother. Like a mother that is still lactating. That's what
Oh, a
I'm trying to.
lactating mom.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's fine.
Sorry.
The accent is different and I'm not used to.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see why not. I don't see why not. I think it'll improve breast milk production. In fact,
Yeah, you
I've been
mentioned that.
I've been researching it because, like I said, I've proposed a faculty-wide project, and one of the things that I proposed was that we investigate breast milk production in lactating moms before and after moringa administration. So I even believe that it could impact the weight, the growth, of the infant itself. So I think it's great, but you need to verify this. Maybe look it up and see if there's any published research that can support this before actually, moving forward with it.
Okay, let me just take this last question. I'll take them too. One is asking between moringa and soursop leaf, which one is best for which one is best for treating cancer? And a follow-up question: can moringa leaf and garlic help help in dementia and memory loss patients? Thank you.
Moringa. Okay, the
It's,
first one was soursop leaves. I haven't looked a lot at soursop leaves, but I am on Facebook groups for cancer patients that they seem to support the use of soursop, and I'm seeing a lot more coming through. So I would say combine it. I mean, it's not going to hurt if you combine it, right? So I can't say unless a study's been done where like this one, like in vitro study where you're comparing both microgram for microgram, then you can say, okay, this is more than the other. Offhand, I can't tell you which is better at killing cancer cells. But if you find that there are plenty of studies that support that both can do it, you can use one or the other, or you can even use them synergistically. You can combine them and use them. There's nothing that stops you from doing that. These are natural compounds, and you're not using the extracts, a single agent where it can cause side effects. You're using compounded, the leaves itself. So I would say, go for it. Just use both. I didn't quite get the second question. If you could repeat that one for me, I'm sorry.
Okay, the second question is asking, can moringa leaf and garlic help dementia and memory loss patients?
Dementia and memory loss. Okay, now if you're talking dementia, okay, I'm not expert in all things, but
Yeah.
I have looked at what can cross the blood-brain barrier. So for those who don't understand what blood-brain barrier is, so not all substances can pass into the brain space and the cerebrospinal fluid. So there's only key ingredients that can get there. So if it contains maybe some of that, it possibly would. I know that garlic contains a substance called N-acetylcysteine. or NAC. NAC is a substance that is derived from cysteine, which is an amino acid derivative. So this substance is fairly benign. It's found in supplements. It can pass through the blood-brain barrier. It can reduce inflammation, increase glutathione, and it can actually help with things like dementia. But I would also suggest using another plant compound called sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is extracted from cruciferous vegetables, particularly broccoli. So that one I investigated because I had a relative who had a rare neurological disorder, but it was late stage, and by the time he was diagnosed, and he succumbed to that. But the review of literature and the research that I did supported the fact of using N-acetylcysteine or NAC. If you look up NAC, you'll definitely come up with N-acetylcysteine if you can't remember how to spell it or to pronounce it. And then there's sulforaphane. I would suggest you use a combination of these two to mitigate, and these are plant extracts, to mitigate dementia and even things like long COVID, because both of these substances, they can pass through the blood-brain barrier, which is exactly what you want. But yes, garlic can do that, but the active ingredient in the garlic that is actually going to help, and you need obviously more of it, would be the NAC itself. Yeah. Okay, that's my response.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for dragging you again after the hectic day. We really appreciate your time, your commitment in helping and contributing in improving the quality of life of Africans, and especially educating members of the Afrolongevity community. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much to the Afrolongevity Foundation and for the platform. Thanks so much.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good evening. Bye.